Planning Committee meeting to order. January 10th, 2023. We have a somewhat less of an agenda tonight than we did our last meeting, so we may proceed in a different fashion. Before I begin, I just wanted to make mention of a couple ground rules for the people that have not been here before, and that is I'm speaking to the ladies and gentlemen in the audience. For your information, there are washrooms through this door to the right, and the important thing is that when we do public hearings, it's important that we carry them out in a fair manner. And in order to do that, people do not want to be intimidated by people speaking from the crowd, cheering, clapping, that kind of thing. So I would appreciate it if you did not make any activity from the crowd during the meeting. And if you wish to talk with your neighbors, please do so in a quiet manner. And if you wish to leave at any time, please do not congregate in the foyer, because that acts as an echo chamber to the room and we can hear everything you say. So just either move right outside, or there's a room in here where you can talk in a quiet manner. So that having been said, I'll warn the committee members that my voice is not good tonight, and at some point I may have to relinquish the chair and allow the vice chairman to chair the meeting, and he's aware of that and he's prepared to do that. So with those announcements, we have an agenda. Well, actually the attendance, everyone is present. And we have an agenda that has been circulated. I've just been informed that item number 7.1, the application about this telecommunications tower, the applicant has asked for a deferral, so we can defer that. My only problem is that there may be people here who came to speak to that application. So when we get to that application, if anyone wishes to speak, I'll allow them to make the comments with regard to that application. But the proponent or the applicant is not here and has asked for a deferral, so we can keep that in mind. So that having been said, could I have a motion to approve the agenda? Moved by the mayor and seconded by Councillor Pierce. Are there any additions? Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No additions. I would have to leave at 9 o'clock. That's all.
That having been said, with the deferral, request for deferral in mind, all those in favor of the agenda? Opposed? Motion is carried. There's a provision for the declaration of pecuniary interest, and I believe Councillor Garneau has a conflict.
I do, and it's with regards to item 8.1 on the agenda. The nature of it is both the current occupant and potential future occupant are vendors / competitors to my spouse's business.
And that will be noted. And if I don't pick that up at the time, you can remind me. Okay, we have two delegations this evening with the addendum in mind. The first delegation is Mr. Rob Innes from Mount Pleasant, speaking about building in Mount Pleasant. And Mr. Innes is coming to the podium, and I went through the rules with him before the meeting, so he's all set to begin. Carry on.
I'm Rob Innes, I live at 729.
Sorry,
729 Mount Pleasant Road. My name is Rob Innes, I live at 729 Mount Pleasant Road in Mount Pleasant. Thank you for taking the time to hear me today. Essentially, I am requesting that the council and the committee consider dropping the moratorium on building in Mount Pleasant. Currently, the Severances are allowed for new lots in Mount Pleasant, but holding provisions are in place, and that is until the city of Brantford takes over the water to the Tula Heights area. To the best of my knowledge, that could happen by 2025, but that deadline has already been pushed back once, and there's no telling when we met in the future. So essentially, building is paused indefinitely in Mount Pleasant. I'm definitely not an expert on municipal affairs, but it is my opinion that this policy is bad for the county and for lot owners like myself who would like to build a house. Instead of prohibiting building on these lots, I would ask that the county consider to allow building, but owners would be required to provide the water at their own expense. This could be done using a cistern or a well. I'm not sure which the county would prefer. I know that that is currently the practice in many parts of the county, including in areas of Mount Pleasant where municipal water is not available. The county could also require these people to prepay for water connection fees, so when water is available, it could be hooked up immediately. In this plan, all costs are incurred by the homeowners, and the county experiences no cost themselves, but they do benefit. I believe they would benefit because development and permit fees could be collected immediately rather than waiting for water to be available. They would see an increase in property tax revenue. Vacant lots produce substantially less property tax revenue than lots with houses on them. This plan would see an increase in the housing supply. It would be minimal, but obviously this is a big issue municipally and provincially. When building in Mount Pleasant is available, I believe there will be a backlog with people trying to remove holding provisions and get permits approved. And I think that that would put a strain on the county staff, so this, I believe, would eliminate that backlog. And finally, I believe the biggest one is that the current trend in Mount Pleasant is to take an older home, tear it down, and build a new house. This is obviously not the greatest environmentally. There's a lot of extra building material ends up in the landfills. But from what I've been told, development fees are waived in that case, which would result in the county losing approximately a little over $40,000 for every house that gets torn down and a new one built in its place. So again, under my plan, all costs will be incurred by the homeowners, and the county, I think, would benefit financially. So in summary, I guess I would ask that you consider removing this building moratorium for newly created infill lots in Mount Pleasant. Currently, I'm not sure who benefits from the current arrangement. I believe the county's losing revenue, and kind of homeowners are stuck in limbo waiting for an unknown date to arrive. The severed lots have been approved already, and building will happen at some point. I'm just trying to speed that up and hopefully get that done immediately rather than waiting until the future. And I think that, as I said, since the costs are taken care of by the homeowner, the county has no cost. I believe it's beneficial for them. Like I said, no expert on municipal affairs, but that's my thoughts. And thank you for listening. If you have any questions, I can do my best to answer.
Mr. Innes, we do have a copy of your presentation that all members of the committee have. And at this time, I would normally ask the committee if they have any questions of clarification of yourself. But before I do that, I'm just going to ask our chief planning official perhaps to respond a little bit to your presentation before I go to the councillors.
Thanks very much. And through the chair, I've had a chance to talk to our general manager of operations, Rob Walton, about the requests and some of the comments here tonight. Mount Pleasant currently doesn't have servicing, and that's one of the major constraints here. Operations is building a development tracking tool for all water and wastewater systems, similar to the one that we've already developed for Paris. As a result of developing that tracking tool, county staff are going to be in discussions with Brantford about the services provided to Brantford. That died. Do you want to cover yours?
Sorry.
Sorry about that. County staff are in discussions with Brantford about the services provided to Brantford residents in the Tutula Heights and when the city may be able to provide these services, thereby making development capacity available. New water rates, which promote water conservation and promotion of water conservation, have decreased peak flows in the Mount Pleasant system. So that's a positive to create more capacity. The development tracking tool that I addressed earlier will assist the county in prioritizing new connections if capacity is available. And it's anticipated that the system capacity information will be available in a report that operations staff will bring to committee or council April or May of this year. So there will be more information coming from operations staff that will be shared in regards to creating more capacity in the Mount Pleasant area shortly.
Committee members, you may have questions of Mr. Innes at this time. What I plan to do is if you have questions of Mr. Innes's presentation, we can ask them now, and then I'll ask Mr. Innes to step down, and then we can discuss it, and you can ask questions of staff at that time. But if there's any questions of Mr. Innes at this time, now is the time to ask. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to the delegation. I appreciate your comments and your letter ahead of time. You and I have just talked about this. How long have you had your lot severed off?
Well, we haven't even finalized all of the conditions in the lot severance, but I went through this process with the public meetings probably about a year ago. I knew about the moratorium on building when we severed our lot, so I'm not trying to claim that I didn't understand the rule or know the rule was in place. My only, I guess, challenge with it is that it doesn't seem to be beneficial, and it'd be great, yes, when there is extra water, but if the homeowner is going to take on the expense of ensuring that they have water until the capacity is available, that's, I guess, just my only thought is that if it's all on the homeowner, it seems like it doesn't make sense for the county not to consider building. But
Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to the presenter, it's a good idea. The only thing is it's all time, right? If you know there's going to be water next year, you'd say, okay, well, hold on. What would be where's that length of time that you would consider going ahead with the cistern versus waiting until there was water? 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 6 months?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I guess just my wife and I and our kids, we just are really interested in building a house. So we're looking to do whatever it takes to get that done. So I don't have an exact timeline. I just know that the 2025 timeline, it feels like, as far as like what I was told, as far as when the city of Brantford is going to take over that water capacity, that feels like it could be extended further. And then that's my worry, is that we just keep waiting, and eventually, my kids are older, and we miss out on that opportunity, I guess. So it sounds promising, I guess, this meeting in April or May, that report's going to be sent in. But again, I don't know much about that at the moment. So,
Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the presenter. Thank you very much for the letter, Rob, and I appreciate the fact that you're coming forth with suggestions. That's great when people do that, and we appreciate that. A couple quick questions. So just so I'm clear here, you've got a property right now that's got a house on it. You're in the workings of severing a piece off to build your dream home type thing, right? So you're living there now.
yes.
Okay. I'm sure that you've probably spoken to a few people in the area, in the Mount Pleasant, stuff like that. Do you get a kind of a vibe as to how many others might be thinking the same thing? Are we talking, 2 or 3? Are we talking 50? Are we talking 100? Or do you know?
Yeah. So again, I don't know exactly, but I did go on the county zoning map, and from what I could see, I saw 4 or 5 other lots that had the holding provision H next to their symbol. So that's all I'm basing it off of. I don't think it's more than a handful currently. And I'm not referring to obviously building a big subdivision. I was talking more about infill as far as small lots that have already been approved. So
absolutely. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions to Mr. Innes? Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Mr. Innes to step down, and committee members, If you have any questions of staff with regard to this, you can ask them now, perhaps before I ask you how you wish to deal with the delegation. Any questions to Matt with regard to the issues brought forward? Then how would you like to deal with the delegation? Councilor Miller?
I'd like to move to receive, and if we could refer this also to the staff report coming forward in April or May.
So it's to receive the presentation and ask staff to report in 2 cycles. Is that what you're saying? Or was it 3 cycles?
We'll go 3 cycles.
3 cycles. And the mayor seconds that. Any comments or questions to the resolution? Basically, go ahead, Councilor Pierce.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, through you. Just a question to Matt. Does that 3 cycles give you the time you need?
Through the chair to Councillor Pierce, it would actually be operations staff who would be preparing that report, likely in conjunction with planning staff. I believe, the report would be brought back in April and May, so it should give us sufficient time to bring that back.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Coleman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't think I can support this. I think that the resident has come forward looking to solve some of the issues that we have. And by waiting 3 months or 4 months, and this is the first I've heard, and I've been sitting at this table for a long time now, about wastewater coming to Mount Pleasant. So I'm a little bit confused by what staff has said, and it would be all great to have all that stuff, but that all takes time. And I think the resident deserves a quicker answer than waiting 3 or 4 months. He's been sitting on a lot, wants to do something, and trying to not cost the municipality any money. Paying ahead of time for a hookup, putting in a well or a cistern, and I would prefer a cistern, because at least with a cistern, once he gets hooked up to water in Mount Pleasant, he's got soft water. And Mount Pleasant water is harder than the hubs of of that brick. So I can't support deferring this or putting this off for 3 or 4 months. I won't support it, Mr. Chair.
Mayor Bailey?
Mr. Chair, I will support it just because I think that 3 months will give us time to talk to the city. There's so many moving parts right now with both the county and the city. Tutla Heights has become sort of an issue for them. A lot more work than they thought, a lot more cost than they thought. I think the end result, letting the man do his own thing to get it done faster. I don't believe the 2025 date is something I would bank on. I think it will get bumped and bumped because Tutla Heights is being bumped and bumped because they really, I'm speaking, this is my own opinion, I don't believe they want it as much as they thought they did. And Tutla Heights is becoming a problem for the city of Brantford. So the 3 months is not my idea of putting this constituent off. I think it's the time we need to talk to the city to find out whether they're going to do anything ever. And if they're not going to do anything ever, or for the next period of time where this man can fit into his lifespan too, to enjoy his property with his kids, 3 months will give us that much time to find out what's really going on. And then at that time, we can come back and let him do his own thing on his own dime. I think 3 months is fair to revisit everything about Tutla Heights and Mount Pleasant.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a clarification from Councillor Chambers. Councillor Coleman, I think I heard you say wastewater. I think you said wastewater earlier.
Through the chair to Councillor Coleman and Councillor Bell, I can't confirm that. I'm not sure. That would be a question for Rob Walton.
Because that's the first time I've heard of it as well. So I'll just one more comment, if I may, Mr. Chair, and it's, I think, through to Matt, who can transfer it onto the operations team. I'd like to understand in the report that comes back if there are any fundamental technical reasons why this solution wouldn't work. I can understand logistically and from an efficiency perspective, you might want to wait until you got water there, but is there an overriding technical reason that prevents this from happening? And I hope the report addresses that. Thank you.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just what I will say, and I understand what Councillor's calling, because there you can hear the frustration. But I would say if operations does their thing, they talk to the city says, yeah, we're looking at 2028. What I would like to see in 3 months, if we don't have the answer that we're looking for, is, well, then how do we proceed to allow them to do it? Because I think planning would have to, and maybe the director of planning could clarify this, would we not have to sign an agreement saying that, they agreed to pay up front, they agreed to, remove the cistern when water comes, stuff like that, and it would be applicable to everybody within the holding area or on holding in Mount Pleasant that are infills and things like that. So I think there would have to be some work on planning staff to make that happen, or development services staff. And maybe that could also, like I say, if it turns out that this report's going to say it's going to be a long time, maybe planning staff or development services could have that ready as well.
Councillor Garneau.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sympathetic to Councillor Coleman's observations here about our homeowner and trying to make the best of the situation. My question, I guess, back to Steph, when we're talking about infill housing, less concerned about cistern and water so much as sanitary and septic. And if we are dealing with community or properties within the village there, with regards to septic and whether this is feasible, because I think the cistern's easily solved, but I'm not sure on the tile bed side of things. So if we are considering this in the report, I think that should also be considered.
Any other comments to the resolution? Just before I call the question, I'm just going to ask Matt, do you have a flavor of what is going to be required of the report that comes back?
Through to chair, to council, it'll be a report that's very similar to the servicing allocation report that was done for Paris. We'll look at sort of priority lots, priority developments that would likely receive servicing ahead of others. Obviously, any of the lots that have been created with a holding would receive priority over a brand new development, so those lots would likely be serviced first. In terms of the questions about septic and wastewater services and that sort of thing, that's something we'll have to address through that report. I just don't have those answers with me today.
Okay, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. Mr. Innes, if you've been following along, there will be a report coming forward to address some of your concerns and ideas. In the meantime, if you just want to stay connected with our planning official or one of the public works people, then feel free to keep liaison with them, and you can monitor the progress of your requests. Our next delegation is a delegation, Mrs. Robinson, with regard to building in Paris. And Mrs. Robinson is going to make her way to the podium. And I have spoken with Mrs. Robinson about the rules and whatnot, so she's aware of what the requirements are.
Hello, my name is Eunice Robinson, and I live on Oak Avenue in Paris, and still not used to that stupid thing. I've moved to Paris. It'll be 9 years on April 1st. I left Paris when I moved here. I really thought it was the prettiest town in Ontario. But unfortunately, things have changed. The city of Brant, Paris, is letting the developers destroy every piece of green space that surrounds Old Paris. It started with the big condominium that was built just a few feet away from our cenotaph, and it hasn't stopped since. I understand that there is a need for homes, but you are letting the developers destroy everything. If there's a piece of green mud right now, they want to build it. They don't want anything left. And I just feel that it's not right. The new survey that was built at the end of Oak Avenue, where I live, and north of Scott, has turned Oak Avenue into almost the drag strip. There are people driving their cars. My husband was outside standing on the front porch one evening, and he was drinking his coffee and getting some fresh air. And there was a car that went by, and it went by so fast he couldn't tell what even make or model the car was. They're averaging 60 to 70 kilometers an hour or more. And there are children on those streets, and there is going to be, where we live, we have to not only watch for people at the stop sign in front of us, but the cars coming up and down Oak Avenue. And you're taking your life into your own hands. Not to mention the fact there is only one way out of Paris, and what used to take 5 minutes now takes at least 20 to 25 minutes. There used to be an M&M shop that was across from Sobeys on Grand River North, and my husband and I got to know the owner of it quite well. And he was getting ready to close the shop because there was no business. And we thought that with all the new homes that were being built, especially that big section that was built on the other side of north of Scott Avenue and the end of Oak Avenue, that was bringing business in. But the odd time when he did get a customer come in, they were saying to him that they've never even been downtown. They work in Oakville or Mississauga. They work there. They buy all their groceries there. They buy everything they need there. They have no need to go downtown. Now, I don't know if that's still the case, but this poor man had to close his business, and he had been there a long time. We do not need any more development in Paris. The only thing we do need is another way out of this town. Rest Acres Road cannot happen to the west end and the north end of Paris. April 1st will be 9 years. Well, I sure have been fooled, because this is not the town that I moved into anymore. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mrs. Robinson. Mrs. Robinson, if you can, just remain for a couple minutes. Perhaps committee members may have questions to Mrs. Robinson.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm sorry.
Anybody wish to comment or speak with Mrs. Robinson while she's at the podium? I don't see anyone that has any questions, Mrs. Robinson, so thank you for your presentation. And once you are at your seat again, I'll ask the committee how they wish to deal with the issues that you brought forward.
I appreciate you letting me come back and speak because originally I was going to rant about the Pinehurst possibility, but thank you for letting me come back. I appreciate it very much.
And thank you for coming back. And while Mrs. Robinson makes her way back to her chair, perhaps committee members can be thinking about how they wish to deal with the presentation. Committee members, any comments or suggestions how to proceed forward? First of all, Councillor Howes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. The comments that Mrs. Robinson has brought forward tonight are very sincere ones, and they're ones that we hear often. And we do often say to residents, if you ever want to come speak to council, you can come as a delegation and speak for 10 minutes on anything you want. And I'm happy to see that someone has taken us up on that suggestion. And it's frustrating to hear the frustrations of these residents, but we do hear it often. So my recommendation is that I move that we refer this to both planning staff and to our Grant Safe Streets program for their just as information for both departments. Thanks.
So the resolution is to receive the presentation and refer it to the appropriate staff for their considerations.
Right. Both of those divisions.
Planning and Safe Streets. Councillor Pierce had his hand up. Would you second that? And then
yeah, I'll
carry on.
second it and speak to it if I could, Mr. Chair. If I could, it was what I was going to suggest earlier, and maybe we could do this as a friendly amendment, but I could also take it to Police Services Board to see if we can do some sort of, patrols or something further up on OCAP.
Any other comments to the presentation or the resolution? Councillor Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, I know sometimes, I'll get one of those calls, one of those letters, one of those emails. I thank them. But I do a little education on my part just to let them know that they're giving us way too much credit. A lot of those decisions about how many people come here and such are made at the higher levels of government, be it provincial or federal. So while I explain what we can do, what we can't do, I always say make sure if you still feel strongly this way, certainly forward your concerns on to your MP and MPP because they got to hear it too, not just people around here who can only do so much, but again, those that are higher levels of government that have more say on those kinds of decisions.
Any other comments? I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Motion is carried unanimously. Mrs. Robinson, again, thank you for your presentation, and you're more than welcome at any time to come and express your views to this committee or council or any other gathering that we have. And it's people like you that make the effort to come and speak to councils that assist us in what we do. So again, thank you very much.
Didn't take up all the land, it would still be fun, but it's heartbreaking to see something that was so pretty turn into something that's not anymore.
And as Councillor Howes has said, you're not alone in your the way you feel. Councillor Pierce?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm wondering if you'd indulge me. Just for clarification for Mrs. Robinson, if I may.
Sure.
Do you live north of Scott Ave? I'm just trying to get the area you live in.
Okay, so I live on Oak Avenue.
Yep.
And
north of Scott?
in the old section, so I'm just past
Okay, down at, okay. So between Whitlaw and Silver?
Right in front of Woodlaw.
Okay, thank you. I just want to know the area. Thank you.
And we called the police many times, see if they come out, but we never, the most I've seen them was Christmas parade.
Okay, then let's proceed with the next item on the agenda, and that is public hearings. Um, Maybe it's not.
Adoption of the minutes.
Oh, the minutes. We'll take a minute to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Mayor Bailey moves that the minutes be adopted. It's seconded by Councillor Miller. Are there any errors or omissions? Just I noticed one thing. The numbers are out of sync with the way it occurred on the agenda. The attendance was number one, and you can adjust that accordingly. So all those in favor of adopting the minutes? Opposed? That motion is carried. Now we can deal with the public hearings. And we have, again, three types of public hearings. One with regard to the telecommunications tower, and that's what we'll deal with right now. 1 minute before the meeting was to begin, I received a notification that the proponent wishes to defer the application or defer the public hearing, and I'm not sure the reason. What I suggest that we do is call the public hearing to order, since people may have come to speak to that, and it's unfair to them to come and then be told that we're not going to have the hearing. So, and recognizing the applicant may have additional information, perhaps we can commence the public hearing and then recess it until the applicant has the opportunity to address. But with that in mind, I'm going to call the public hearing on 7.1 on the agenda with regard to a telecommunications tower at 510 Brant Waterloo Road to order, and ask planner Elma Flahy to perhaps report to the committee. And just to remind the planning staff to speak loudly and clearly into the microphone.
Good evening, Council and members of the public. This is a telecommunications tower application at the property located at 510 Brant Waterloo Road. Staff are recommending two things this evening. One is confirmation that the necessary public consultation has been completed, and the second is that the the location preferred guidelines are not being met for the tower as outlined in the County of Brant Telecommunications Tower Protocol. The subject lands are located on the south side of Brant Waterloo Road, east of Pinehurst Road. The official plan land use designation is agriculture, with a portion of natural heritage to the south of the property. The property is zoned agriculture as well as natural heritage. The applicant is proposing to establish a 65-meter steel self-supported tower situated within a 15 by 15 compound area, surrounded by a 1.8-meter chain link security fence. As part of the application, the agent has provided a detailed site selection report, a site plan, as well as a letter of concurrence, including a summary of public consultation and public concerns and how they are addressed. The site has been reviewed in accordance with the 2020 County of Brant Tower Protocol. Due to the height of the tower being 65 meters, the preferred setback from residential uses and natural heritage features would be 195 meters. The site is located outside of natural heritage features, and GRCA and environmental planning did not have any concerns with the proposed location. Additionally, the proposal is in excess of 195 meters from residential uses. Staff are recommending that the application has completed the necessary public consultation with the public and the County of Brant. The recommendation concludes that the tower is not in accordance with the preferred location guidelines as outlined in the protocol. Thank you, and happy to answer any questions.
Just before committee members ask their questions, if they have any, I'm going to ask the chief planning official just to review about our role in telecommunication towers. We're not an approval agency, we're a commenting agency, and I'm just going to let Matt explain that to the committee and members of the public, the council's role in situating telecommunications towers.
Certainly, through the chair to the committee, yes, as Councillor Chambers has alluded to, we don't approve radio or telecommunications towers. We do have protocol, council approved protocol that it's compared against. If the application doesn't meet those protocol, we simply just state that in the report, and a message is sent through to the federal government. The federal government is the approval authority of those towers. It is advantageous that they do get sort of a positive recommendation from council, but it's not always necessary.
Are there questions to the planner or to the chief planning official with regard to the process or the application? Councillor Miller.
Just one question, Mr. Chair. Just to be clear, through to the planner, the recommendation is that it doesn't meet our protocol simply because, not because it's not close to a house, but because it's too close to the natural heritage area. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Then I would thank the planner for the introduction. Actually, this is the second public hearing with regard to this proposal. Now, the applicant has asked for deferral. I'm thinking that the applicant is perhaps with us and may wish to address the committee and perhaps comment on the request for deferral. And whoever it is, I see your hand, but I can't see your name, so carry on.
Yes, thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the members of the council. My name is Tracy Phelan-Abs. I represent Shared Tower Inc. with respect to this proposed application. So with respect to the resolution, we did get comments from the Conservation Authority and your local departments, and they do not have any concerns with the setback. So we did do something similar for Baptist Church, where council directed administration to soften up the resolution a little bit to say, even though it does not comply with your blanket recommendation, that they were still in support. So we would eventually ask council to consider such an amendment to that resolution. Just even to go back at the public information session and the public open house that was held, only one comment was mentioned. That was the location of the osprey nest and the removal of farmland. We did address the fact that we would agree to any construction to only be limited to the winter time to ensure that any migration does not get disturbed. And we've taken out as small amount of agricultural productivity as possible. And no other comments were received. So overall, this is a very supportive tower. However, we were just informed today by ISID, who is the government body, that they would like us to address the nearby AM tower locations, which there are 5 towers north of this property. They want us to do a written technical analysis to ensure that there's no interference, and we've agreed to that. So that is the reason for the deferral, just to allow us to do the technical review, and we'll provide that to the AM tower, which is owned by Rogers, and we will provide them with that information and ensure that there's no interference. And if there is any modifications that need to be done to this tower, whether we need to move it back or move it away, that's where we want to have that opportunity. to recess and come back to the committee and report back to let you know if there had been any changes based on that technical analysis. So happy to answer any of the questions that you might have at the appropriate time.
Okay, the appropriate time may be, I've just been informed that a representative from Rogers may be here and wishes to speak as well.
That is correct. Can you hear me?
Yes, if you can identify yourself and then.
My name is Calla Dudney. I am the Senior Manager of Regulatory at Rogers. And I am here with our one of our managing engineers. And thank you, Tracy, for what you just shared with us. We first would like to apologize that we missed the first phase of consultation. The documentation did not, unfortunately, get to the right people at the right time, so we did miss that first round. But we are here, and we appreciate your taking the time to listen to us to basically echo what Tracy just said, which is that we do have some concerns about the adjacency of this proposed tower to our AM radio station, that's CKGL AM, operating in the Kitchener-Waterloo area. We have directly across the road from that site our AM tower location. It's a series of 5 towers that emits our signal. And mindful of the time, I'm going to ask Mike to quickly describe for you the technical issues, and then I will close up with my closing comments.
Hopefully,
yes, thank you there, Calla, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for listening to us and taking our notes here.
Okay, just before you begin,
yes, sir.
I'm not sure where you are.
I don't think his camera is working.
Okay.
Oh, my camera is on. Sorry.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Just a second.
My camera is on.
Okay. The point of order.
This doesn't sound like a deferral.
It's a public hearing that we can't. It's not a deferral. It may be a recess. I said at the beginning we're going to carry out the public hearing, and then we can recess the public hearing. It's not a deferral. You're absolutely right.
Can you see me now, sir?
Yes, I can see you now. And just to remind you that I don't know how long your presentation is going to be, but it has to be within 9 minutes.
Two sentences, sir. So thank you then, Mr. Chair, and councillors. Our biggest concern is with these towers is the effect that the structure is going to have on our existing signal that is managed and regulated by ISED at a federal level. If any alter to our signal is alter to our license, which is going to make a difference to the pattern, and we could lose our listenership, which is known as the Tri-Cities, Kitchener-Waterloo, Cambridge, and Guelph area. So there's also safety concerns due to radiation, which is an AM tower is what it emits. It emits a low frequency radiation that is called Safety Code 6. And in part of that radiation, to the other towers and the proposed structure, because they're so close, it does have effect on our business when they need to use that structure. So it's not necessarily what they're putting on the tower, it's the structure itself that will affect the signal. So that's our biggest concern that we're looking at now and why we're here. Thank you.
And if I may jump back in and just to close out what Mike stated about Safety Code 6, what he's saying is that there is a radiation pattern that emits from those towers that can affect other people, including people that could be on the proposed site by land squared. There's a certain distance that you have to maintain from the tower. So really it's a twofold. It's the effect on our signal, and it's the safety concerns that are for people around that area, especially if you're proposing a build that close to it. So we're voicing our concerns about this now. We're not opposed to it as of yet. We would like the technical survey done that Land Squared has proposed to do. We're going to be commissioning one ourselves as well, which we will have completed by January 20th. And we would like to request that the County of Brant wait until they've received this information and there is a resolution to this issue before any letter of concurrence is issued.
Okay, and that concludes your presentation?
It does. I'm ready to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, let me go back to the applicant, and I apologize, I don't have the name in front of me, and I didn't write it down. Do you have anything final at this point before I ask the committee if they have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, Tracy Pilon Abs, and I have no further comments. I appreciate the cooperation from Rogers and looking forward to sitting down with them and reviewing the technical analysis. Thanks.
So if I understand it correctly, you are requesting that the public hearing be recessed until you have time to confer and collaborate with the people that have just spoken.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, just in case the tower location needs to change, we want to make sure we bring forward the most up-to-date concept plan, and we'll have that confidence knowing whether there'll be any impacts on the AM towers or not.
Committee members, do you have any questions? Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For clarification, I guess to the Rogers representatives there, you said something about it emitting some radiation. Are you speaking of the AM towers, or are you speaking of the proposed tower?
The existing AM towers emit an RF radiation, and the only way you can't see it or touch it, but if you have a steel structure close to the signal, you will get an RF, what is called an RF radiation from the signal. The towers themselves are the antennas, so they are not. It's not like a tower you see out there, the tall broadcast gray towers with the blinking lights with the antennas on it. The tower itself is an antenna, and that holds the power. So anything close to it is going to, you will feel the radiation from it. So a structure in that pattern and in the way, a person climbing on the tower and creating the potential of the frequency point A to B could feel the effects of the RF, which is outlined in Safety Code 6. Hope that answers your question.
That's interesting information. I appreciate that.
It's quite a science, sir. Quite a science.
Are there any other questions from the committee? Okay, I will entertain a motion for a recess, but before we do that, there may be people from the public who have come to the meeting to express comments or concerns, and I'm going to give them the opportunity to do that, and then the committee can decide what they want to do with the application. So, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak to this application? And if you do, I think you had spoke before, so you know the rules. Come on up and identify yourself, and you have the floor.
Oh, you gotta push the button? I didn't push the button. Anyway, I pushed the button now, and thank you, Mr. Chairman and councilors. My name's Morris Rutherford. I am a taxpayer in Brant County, a commercial taxpayer, and that was one of my questions with this tower. I've gone through that part with the radiation before. They will turn down any building permit next to their property, and that I don't agree with. Anyway, the first thing I want to know, what about the setback for the tower? Do we not have to have a setback from the road? Do we have to rezone the property to make it commercial, to make it commercial taxable, just the same as I pay as a commercial property owner? Or do they get it for nothing? It is a Rogers communication tower, and it is a rental tower. And that rental tower is no different than my business. I rent my business, and I pay commercial tax. Am I correct? Good. I realize that we're losing over 300 acres of property, agricultural property every day, 300 plus, and it could be 500 shortly. The tower only takes up about 1/7 of an acre. That's probably about $800 in tax money on commercial property. We farm right across the road. I'm here with 2 other property owners next door. And the setback, the zoning is my biggest concern. I listened to a lady speak here about Paris and how the traffic is. We used to live on a road that 1 car went up about every 3 hours. Now we might have 50 cars in an hour and transport trucks. I can't stand in the way of progress, and I'm not gonna. I realize we need the towers, but I'm not sure we have to put a tower in the middle of a field that's workable, an agricultural land when there's all sorts of land. And I drove to Simcoe on the weekend. Every radiation tower, every communication tower that I've seen has a setback. It's either behind a commercial building or it's back from the road. It's not next to the road. They just got 2 in Cambridge went up. They're on commercial property. One's in a swamp where you can't farm. And that's the long and the short of this radiation tower. I know as council members, you have nothing to do with it. I know that fact. We have a government that doesn't look at it the way we do, but I am a property tax payer in Brant County, and I do pay commercial tax on 3 acres, and most of you know what the price is. And I would like to see the same with a radiation tower or a communication tower. And the other thing that I would like to say, in 10 years, it'll be obsolete. And who takes it out? I thank you for the moment, and I appreciate the lady that spoke about the traffic. Paris is a place that you have to do something about traffic. We need a bridge.
Okay, we have made note of your comments and concerns. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to the application? And while people are thanking people, I would like to thank the lady over there that brought me up some lozenges for my throat. That may make me be able to finish the meeting, but I have to talk with it in my mouth, so I apologize for that. Okay, I see no one else from the audience wishing to make comment. We have had a request for a deferral or a recess for them to bring back additional information. How that would work is that at another meeting, the same public hearing would be on the agenda, and we would pick up from where we left off. The other option is to proceed with the public hearing and make a recommendation to council. It's up to the committee what they wish to do. So I'm up for a resolution. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll move for deferral.
A recess, seconded by Councillor Pierce. Yes.
1 cycle, is that enough?
Is 1 cycle enough? I think they're nodding their heads, which is a month. Okay, I think that's agreeable to the applicant. So it's a motion to recess the public hearing until our next meeting to allow them to bring forward additional information. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. All right, let's move on to the next part of the agenda, and that's public hearings pursuant to the Planning Act to receive information from the public. And we have 1 public hearing scheduled, and this is a public hearing where we receive information without the recommendation from the planning staff, and it's practice that we receive the information after it's presented. So 8.1, the planner that is going to say that again.
It's online. It's a county representative.
Okay, I think I can see you. Okay, the planner is prepared to make the presentation. I will declare the public hearing for What is it? Whatever it is, I declare it to be open and ask the planner to proceed with the introduction to the application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, good. I wasn't sure because it's showing that my mic is muted. So thank you and good evening. My name's Marisa Williams and I'm a project manager with WSP who's working with the county on planning services. I'm presenting today the application in front of you, which is for zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 44-22-DN. The subject land is located at 409 German School Road, and the applicant and agent is Leslie Drake, who's the landowner, and IBI Group is the agent that's representing Ms. Drake. The purpose of this presentation is for information only. The subject land is located at approximately 6.5 kilometers west of St. George and approximately 4 kilometers north of Brantford, on the north side of German School Road. The property has approximately 341 meters of frontage along German School Road and is approximately 38 hectares in size. The focus of the zoning bylaw amendment is to allow an additional residential unit at the southwest corner of the property, which is separated from the main dwelling and other buildings located on the site by natural features. In terms of the official plan and zoning bylaw, the current official plan shows the subject lands as designated as agricultural and natural heritage system in the agricultural area, and the subject land is currently zoned as agricultural and natural heritage zones and consists of a single detached dwelling on the east side of the natural heritage feature, agricultural use to the north of the single detached dwelling, and the natural heritage feature that bisects the subject land along the southwest portion. The surrounding areas are also mainly zoned as agricultural with pockets of rural residential development. The following photos illustrates the existing conditions of the site. The subject land currently has access from German School Road through the forested area and the creek crossing at the southeast corner. The existing residence is in the center of the property on the east side of the natural heritage feature and does not contain a basement due to the high water table. The portion north of the existing residence is mainly used for agricultural purposes. At the southwest corner of the property is an existing cleared area of approximately 1.2 hectares or about 2 acres located outside of the natural heritage feature. This is where the applicant landowner is proposing the additional residential unit. The development proposal is had explored 3 possible locations to locate the proposed additional residential unit on the site. 2 of the options are not feasible due to the existing site conditions and proximity to the natural heritage features. The preferred option is to locate the additional residential unit on the southwest corner of the site away from the natural heritage area. This preferred option also meets most of the criteria as set out in the county zoning bylaw, with the following exemptions. The additional residential unit is located approximately 400 meters away from the primary dwelling, where a maximum of 40 meters is permitted. The additional residential unit is to be accessed by a separate driveway entrance, where a shared access is required. And the additional residential unit development area is to be approximately 2,263 square meters, which is about 24,358 square feet, where a maximum of 450 square meters or 4,843.8 square feet is permitted. For these reasons, an amendment is required to rezone the subject land from agricultural to agricultural with special exemption to permit an additional residential unit on the subject property. The next, in terms of the next steps and to provide a summary, the application has been circulated to various internal and external agencies for review in mid-December of 2022. The next steps would be to prepare the planning report for a formal recommendation and to circulate the public notices per the Planning Act and the County Official Plan Policy. This concludes the presentation, and we are available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams, I believe it is.
Yes.
And I apologize for not recognizing you before.
That's okay.
Since additional residential units are kind of a new thing, I'm just going to ask the chief planner to perhaps if he has anything additional to the application at this time.
Through the chair of the committee, ARUs are a relatively new terminology that we have in our zoning bylaw. They allow a resident to construct a secondary accessory dwelling on their property. There's a few advantages to it. One of the provisions that we've included in the bylaw is the idea of keeping ARUs within close proximity to the primary dwelling. There's a lot of advantages to doing that. Recently, we also passed a housekeeping amendment to our zoning bylaw that requires the entrance of the ARU to share the same entrance of the primary dwelling. And we've also added the ability of extending the area past a certain threshold using a clustering principle. So if there's an accessory structure or something nearby the primary dwelling, it sort of creates a cluster, thereby increasing the parameter that the ARU can be situated on. So the application tonight proposes something a little different, and the consultant WSP has provided the application for you tonight. So if there's any questions, Marissa is available for question, or so am I. Thank you.
Are there any questions? First of all, Councillor Bell and then Councillor House.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the presenter or to Matt. My first reaction to seeing this, it looks more like a new lot. It is 2,000 square feet in total. I know half of it is residential, half of it is another structure. The fact that it has its own entrance from German School Road kind of gives it the feel of a new lot creation rather than ARU. Would you like to comment on that and explain why I would see a real difference between the two?
Through the chair to Councillor Bell, I can only speculate at this point, as Marissa and Johnson, another planner with WSP, were the lead planners on this one. But I think what the applicant is attempting to do here is to avoid the natural heritage area. The dwelling, the primary dwelling in this case, is very much surrounded by natural heritage features. There's not a lot of space around it to locate an ARU without sort of necessitating an EIS and to study the natural heritage area there. I think they're just trying to create a situation where it's just outside of that area altogether. And there's not a lot of space in other places on the lot to do that, but where they've provided the ARU in this case.
Follow up, if I may, Mr. Chair. The deviation from the distance from the main house to the ARU, which we set at 40 in our zoning bylaw, here it's 400 metres. I recall from my days on the Committee of Adjustment, we talked about minor variances. This one strikes me as being well beyond minor variance. Did you have in mind any limitations on how far we might stretch the 40?
Through the chair to Councillor Bell, no, you're absolutely right, and I think that's why this application has come in as a zoning bylaw amendment as opposed to a minor variance. Clearly, in this case, it wouldn't pass the minor test, so there's other tests that we would put the application against. Is it appropriate? would be the big one in this case. Is a good planning, is what they're proposing sort of in the interest of the county and of the public. So some of those considerations will be what our consultant will have to use to analyze this application in the future.
Councillor Howes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Matt. With ARUs in general, the new secondary dwelling, it shares the same address, correct? Actually, I'll ask a few questions and I'll let you answer. I'm wondering, do they typically share, like, have one address? And do they typically share services, like utilities and services? And then my other question is, the parameters that you spoke about a few minutes ago related to the framework around our ARU program, essential neighborhoods in mind, as opposed to more rural lots like this. Thanks.
Yeah, so I'll first answer through the chair to Councillor Howes. I'll first answer your question about access. So the policy and the provisions require it to share the same access, but for EMS or fire purposes or mail delivery, it would likely receive its own address. So if it's 500 ABC Drive, it may be 500B ABC Drive or something like that. Probably not a good example of some of the letters there, but you get the idea. It'll get its own address just for those purposes. In terms of where it's located in the rural or agricultural area versus urban area, ARUs do fit in better in the urban area. We do have more requirements for them to fit into our agricultural area. One of the big ones is that it's not a dwelling that could be severed in the future, because that would compromise a lot of our other policies in our ag area. So that is something that has to be considered in the future.
Any other questions to the planners? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, it's the exact same questions as Councillor House, Councillor Bell. But I didn't hear the one answer, and I will share the concerns I have. Is the first you read it, you think it sounds
Councillor Miller, this is just to receive information, questions, clarifications, and we're not obliged to be giving opinions.
Okay, but it does sound like a seven. Did the question that I didn't hear from Matt is, did it have to be on the same service as well in septic?
Through the chair to Councillor Miller, good follow-up. In this case, it doesn't have to share same services. It does have to have has to be on private services, and the services have to be available. Generally speaking, when residences add ARUs to our agricultural properties, it's not often that the existing dwelling with its septic and well would be able to service an ARU. Generally, those septic systems are built with a certain number of bedrooms and faucets and all that sort of thing in mind. So one of the options might be to upgrade the existing facilities to accommodate the size requirements. Another is just to install a separate one.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Going back to what Councillor Howell said earlier, Matt, can you explain that about, is it no severance in stone? Or I think rules are made to be broken. So that's a big concern of a lot of people right now.
Yeah. Through the chair to Councillor Coleman's great question. Obviously, all of our policies would prohibit the severance of an additional residential unit in the agricultural area. However, that's not to say that an applicant couldn't come in with an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment to request a deviation from those policies, and that's something that this committee and council eventually would have to consider.
Okay, let's hear from the applicant. And is the applicant in the room or in the... Okay, here we go. In the room. And Mr. Stewart knows all the rules about the applicant's presentations.
You just do that. Oh. Is it just those two?
screwed up.
Oh, Gary, can you put it on the screen? Thanks.
Again, if I may begin, my name is Douglas Stewart. I am here on behalf of Leslie Haig. Because this is an information meeting, that's why I'm here. I'm going to give you the information which you will want to hear and will provide you some further direction. I want to compliment staff and the consultants who have provided the background information. I'm here to provide some supplementary information. I want you to know that in the consideration of this application for an additional residence, we've looked at every potential that the policies would permit. Inside a house, expansion of the house, a separate house inside another structure. We've looked at those. We've given consideration. In planning, as you're fully aware, there's not an easy one answer. There's competing interests. This proposal would conform to the provincial plans and the county plans. So the official plan and the provincial policies have established that an additional residence as an accessory is permitted. The county has established regulations in your bylaw that are to be considered. Regulations are there for direction and for a purpose. Those regulations also can be amended. This was not a candidate for a minor variance. As a professional planner, I couldn't have supported it. So the request is for a minor zoning bylaw amendment as established by the county. What's important here is in the consideration of the options, our client is wanting to build a utility building on their property for the purposes of housing machinery that functions for their operation. The request for the additional residence is to locate that as part of that future utility building. It's important that in your consideration and your understanding that first, a utility building that's not part of this request because it's permitted, the additional residence would be part of it. We looked at the existing location where the house is and a garage. If I can describe it, and the background pictures will show it, it's in an isolated area surrounded by natural environment features. It crosses the Fairchild Creek, crosses a hazard to get to the existing house. It functions, it's acceptable. When we looked at it, our opinion was crossing a hazard for this was not necessarily in everyone's best interest. Because, as I've said, there's a high water table, there's natural environment features, there's insufficient space to locate the utility building and the additional residence. For your information, the septic tile bed for the house that exists is up the hill in the farmer field. We looked at other options and was discussed by your consultant The current location where the existing house, I've explained, is not feasible or viable, or I believe in the best interest. There was an existing part adjacent to the main access to the house. Two things went against it. Providing separation for the natural environment wasn't possible. Secondly, it was within an influence of a minimum distance separation of an existing agricultural operation. The third location is an isolated field outside of the farm cluster with frontage on a public street with an existing farm access and has been made use of from an agricultural perspective related to their business of a nursery. That location can meet the minimum distance separation. The access meets the minimum site distance. The location provides sufficient separation from the natural environment feature and would be the ideal location for their farm utility building they propose to build. Therefore, you're looking at a building being proposed with an ARU inside it or part of it. The question of whether, while it looks like in isolation, it could become a land severance, most people would look at that and say, absolutely, it's an ideal candidate. Provincial policy says no. The county official plan says no. So don't look at it as if a land severance has any potential. It doesn't conform to provincial policy, it's not consistent with it, and it doesn't conform to the county's official plan. It's a non-starter. My comment is, we've looked at your official plan, we've looked at the provincial policies, and this is the candidate area where this should be proposed and supported. It meets your policies. Yes, to the average person, a separation distance not part of the farm building is what would be preferred, but it doesn't mean it can't not be somewhere else. I'm here to answer any questions you may have and look forward to when this comes back to council for consideration. And this concludes my presentation.
Thanks, Doug. Are there any questions to the applicant, Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Douglas, and maybe also to Matt. Could you say more about the issue of NDS in respect of ARUs? I'm a little surprised that it is an issue because almost by its very nature, an ARU is close to an existing building and would almost certainly not comply if the existing building was close to a farming operation.
If I may reply back through the chair, the county official plan and the policies require an agricultural impact study be part of the evaluation. Conformity with the minimum distance separation, which you're most familiar with, is one of the requirements. In this case, a study was done, looked at all of the farms all around, and the conclusion was the location that's been selected meets that. There are places on the farm where it doesn't meet it. It's the adjacent farms has the impact. It's not the farm. It's not its own.
Are there any other questions? Then I would thank the applicant for the presentation.
Thank you.
And it's the opportunity for the public to make comment. If there are any comments, would anyone like to comment on this proposal at this time? The proposal with regard to the ARU. Anyone wish to make comment? I don't see anyone. That leads me to I believe that I can conclude the public hearing, and I will declare the public hearing adjourned. And again, it's customary for a resolution to receive the information and consolidate it with the report at a subsequent meeting. Would someone make that motion? Councillor Pierce, seconded by Councillor Howes. Are there any questions with regard to the resolution or the application? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried, and this will be coming back at a second public hearing at a subsequent meeting. And you're aware of that the process. Now, the next part of the agenda are public hearings with accompanying staff recommendations. And since there are just a few, it's more than manageable to be able to just do the public hearing and then the deliberations right after the public hearing. And the first public hearing, 9.1, is a public hearing with regard to 982 Rest Acres Road, Paris, and the planner is prepared to introduce the application to the committee. I declare the public hearing open.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a presentation of a plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment application for the property located at 982 Rest Acres Road. And I believe our agents, MHBC Planning, and the property owners are with us this evening. And staff are recommending approval of this application. So the subject lands are identified on your screen, highlighted in red. This application, or these applications, were originally presented back in April for information purposes. The subject lands are located in the northwest quadrant of the Highway 403 corridor and have an total area of approximately 32.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Are we able to get that on both?
Hopefully.
Sorry, Dan.
While the technicians are working on getting the screen not to be the same as that one anymore, but there we go. Now we got on that one, but not that one. We're good.
Okay.
Carry on, Dan.
So I was just noting that the property does have 32.9 hectares of area and frontage along both Powerline Road and Rest Acres Road. The official plan designates the subject lands as employment with special policy areas 12 and 16. 12 permits additional complementary commercial related uses in addition to employment or industrial uses, and special site specific policy area 16 identifies the Green Energy Accord, which encourages the establishment of employment opportunities and technologies along the 403 corridor. The current zoning on the property is agricultural with a natural heritage zoning identifying an existing wetland on the property. I've provided a list of surrounding zones to the north, south, east, and west, consisting of a mix of residential uses, commercial uses, institutional uses, and recreational uses. So previously, back in April of this year, or of last year, I presented the plan of subdivision application with this rezoning, which looked in a similar form up as it is up on the screen, which consisted of the red, the blue, and the green areas, identifying an area that was to be developed as commercial along a new municipal road, identified as Street A, with the blue area as industrial and the green areas consisting of stormwater management facilities and related servicing corridors. The previous rezoning proposal included site-specific zoning to tailor the zoning to the, in that red area, that commercial area that I referred to, as well as the site specifics in the blue being the industrial, and changing the zoning appropriately to identify the uses of the green area for stormwater management purposes. I'll just also note that the red asterisk in the white square there identifies the location of the new County of Brant water tower, which is nearing completion. So since April, we have had a chance to review technical comments received as part of the initial circulation. The applicants have decided to revise the proposal to do a number of things. One, it takes a lot of the environmental discussion out of the proposal, which will allow the employment uses, the blue and the green area, to move forward in a little bit of a more simplified manner. It takes those lands to the north out of the application, so council or committee will have an opportunity to review those lands and the wetland features and all of the technical matters related to that northern portion. We will have an opportunity to review that at a later date as part of a separate application. So the new revised proposal, which is identified in red, again eliminating the portion to the north, stays very much the same, identifying a large block dedicated to industrial uses, and the green areas for stormwater management. The zoning has remained, the request for that industrial portion has remained the same as well. This is rezoning from agricultural to a light industrial zone with a special exception permitting a parking reduction for the warehouse use. And this is a parking reduction where of 1 per 250 square meters, where a rate of 100 or 1 per 100 is currently required. And that's fairly reflective of changes in the industry and parking demands for that specific use. So in terms of where we are in the process, we are at the recommendation stage, where we have held public meetings and have circulated for technical comments, and public notice has been provided with this ahead of this meeting, and I can report that no members of the public have written or provided written comments prior to this meeting. So in terms of detailed design and technical review, the detailed design technical review of the road construction, the servicing, will be completed by satisfying conditions of draft plan approval. Following registration of the draft plan of subdivision, the development of the specific blocks will be facilitated through the site plan control application process, and this is looking at specific access, landscaping, grading, noise, drainage, lighting, etc. A copy of the draft conditions are included in the staff report, and an addendum, a copy was included in the addendum as well. Just some minor tweaks that were made over the holidays. No further comments or concerns were raised as part of the public or technical circulation of the application. And for the reasons outlined in this report, it's my professional recommendation that both the plan of subdivision application and the zoning bylaw amendment application be approved. Happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Pierce, questions of clarification at this point?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Dan. So I'm not sure I caught it right the first time, Dan. Can you just clarify again, what was the rationale for taking off that northern section?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the rationale for removing that northern portion, involved a wetland, an existing wetland. The proposal, as originally presented at the April meeting, proposed to remove that wetland. So an environmental impact study was submitted, which recommended support of the removal. Staff technical comments received from staff and Six Nations and Mississauga to Credit had some conflicting comments. So it was decided that, and those comments were being worked through, but it was going to delay the employment lands portion. So the applicants had decided to remove that from the proposal to allow for really the priority blocks to move forward at a quicker manner.
Thank you.
Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Dan. Dan, the change to the off-street parking requirement, which goes from one spot per 100 square metres to 1 to 250. I've seen that a few times before now in various planning documents. Is that something that our staff would actually recommend if we were about to make a change to the zoning bylaw? The general zoning bylaw?
Through Mr. Chair, that's certainly something that has been coming up through various applications, whether it be to planning committee or committee of adjustment. This is something that we can look at to keep up with kind of best practice.
So, and a related question, if I may, Mr. Chair, does this then imply the whole of this area will be warehousing?
Through Mr. Chair, I don't have a specific user for the site. Perhaps the applicant or representative of the applicant can speak to specifics of users for that site.
So because the reason I asked the question is that I presume that this change of condition would only apply to that part of the site that is warehousing and not to the whole site if it's not all warehousing.
That's correct. The parking reduction only applies to the warehouse use.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kind of along the same lines as Councillor Bell, and we can let the applicant maybe answer this as well if you don't know the answer. But I'm wondering if you could expand, Dan, on how this fits into that green energy accord. You have in your report construction of sustainable infrastructure. I would like to think all infrastructure is sustainable if we're going forward for any development. Is this application going above and beyond that to, like I said, go along with the green energy accord?
Through Mr. Chair, the review, so the green energy accord is part of the site specific designation special policy area. As you pointed out in my report, I do include a brief analysis within that chart that identifies that that this proposal and this plan of subdivision, the zone change is in keeping with the intent of that green energy accord, as it is creating jobs along or job creation opportunities in both after construction, during construction, pre-construction, and we're also providing a new construction that is more sustainable in terms of building product and design. And we are also establishing natural areas that are sustainable in the way that the property functions in terms of stormwater management. This stormwater management will also be naturalized along the 403 corridor. So it's my opinion that this proposal is in keeping with the intent of that green energy accord.
Thank you, Dan.
I see no other questions. Dan, perhaps you can just step back and I'll ask the applicant to come forward and expand upon the application. Just identify yourself to the committee.
Dave Aston with MHBC Planning. Thanks to Dan for his presentation and for fielding some of those questions. We're really here tonight in support of the staff recommendation. Vacano Developments is pleased to have this moving forward. There's been a lot of work done with county staff to take designated employment lands, probably at your key corridor within the county, and get them to a point where they can become ready for future investment and job creation. And so that's what we're here to support tonight. The recommendations and conditions, we've reviewed those and have worked with Dan and other county staff to ensure that the conditions of approval provide for the appropriate considerations of details as development occurs, and there will be future site plan approval that will look at greater details associated with matters such as stormwater, low impact development, and other items that really are where the sustainable considerations are put into effect. With regard to the lands to the north, Dan did correctly identify the reason for moving those out of the application at this time, really to get the road network put in place and the infrastructure put in place that would facilitate the future investment of the industrial block. We'll work with county staff on the north portion of the lands and considerations of the technical studies that were supported relative to the opinions that we received. And I don't know that if there's any other questions I need to pick up, but I'm happy to respond to any questions this evening. But again, just here in support and request that the committee support the staff recommendations.
Committee members, do you have any questions to Mr. Aston? Councillor Miller.
The clarification on the question I asked the planner. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Dave. So this is warehousing, correct?
Through Mr. Chair, the council, there's no, we don't have the defined users of the site yet. Warehousing has been a use that's been discussed. That's not the only use that's been discussed on the block.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just, I mean, that Green Energy Accord, it was 2 councils ago. It was Paul Emerson and former mayor and council at the time that came up with that, and I don't see it in this development, but I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Is that a question?
No, just expressing frustration.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Then, David, I just ask you to step aside for a moment, and then I'll ask if there are any comments or concerns from the audience. And it'll be up to you to keep track of any questions, and you'll be allowed to come back to answer them. Members of the audience, do you wish to make comment on this application? I'll ask a second time. Anybody want to speak to this application? And a final time, and I see no further questions from the audience, so I'm in a position where I can adjourn the public hearing. Public hearing is adjourned. Now, since there's not a lot of applications, I think we can deliberate and come to a conclusion with regard to this application at this point. So how does the committee wish to deal with it? Mayor Bailey, sorry.
I'd like to see it approved.
And Councillor Coleman seconds that. Are there any questions or comments? Before I call the question, I just want to make one comment, and I find it very interesting, the comments from the Six Nations of the Grand River with regard to the brown bat. And there was a concern that the habitat of the brown bat would be compromised with this development. And sure enough, the applicant and staff have responded in the development agreement to provide habitat for enhancement for the brown bat, which I thought was very interesting and commendable, especially if you're a brown bat. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And that will take us to the next public hearing, and that's a public hearing with regard to 125 Oakland Road. And Dan is prepared to introduce the application to the committee. I'll declare the public hearing open.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a zoning bylaw amendment application that is being presented for the property located at 125 Oakland Road. And I believe the agent is with us this evening, perhaps virtually, and staff are recommending approval of this application. As previously presented at an earlier information meeting, this application, or the subject lands, are identified entirely in red on the screen. They have a total area of 10.5 hectares. They contain an existing single detached dwelling and 2 agricultural buildings that are located in the northwest corner along closer to Oakland Road. And surrounding area consists of residential, some commercial, institutional, and agricultural uses. These three images show the current state of the subject lands. The first two in the kind of facing where the proposed future development may occur, and the third picture, that existing dwelling and accessory structures. So the proposal remains unchanged from initially presented, where the application proposes to amend the zoning on the subject lands from agricultural to suburban residential and expansion of the natural heritage zone in order to facilitate future residential lot creation on the subject lands fronting Oakland Road within the settlement boundary of Oakland. So you'll see on this, on the proposal mapping, the agricultural to suburban residential portion. This is the area north of the 30-meter natural heritage expansion. You'll note that there is a 30-meter natural heritage expansion portion that is in recognition of the hazard lands to the south. This application is required, again, to facilitate and permit residential uses on the property, and any further lot creation along Oakland Road, as the applicants have demonstrated or proposed, will be facilitated through a future consent application. The subject lands are currently designated as a suburban residential land use within the settlement area of Scotland. The lands to the south are identified, or the portion of the lands in the southern portion are identified in that green area, reflecting the natural heritage zone, which will remain unchanged as part of this application, with the exception of that expansion. And the current zoning on the subject lands is agricultural with natural heritage in the green area. So again, in terms of the process, we have held a public meeting, and technical circulation has occurred, and we are recommending approval of the application, looking for a decision from the committee. I will note that conditions of the future consent application will include requirements to provide proof of potable water, legal survey, additional fees associated with parkland for each lot creation, and rural firefighting fee. This includes the removal of an agreement that's previously registered on title, which contemplated requirements for a different form of residential development. The planning justification and recommendation provided in this report are supported by the comments received as part of the technical circulation from internal and external agencies. No public comments were received as part of the technical or the public circulation of this application. The technical comments also reflect the understanding that the details related to drainage, grading, servicing, private servicing will be facilitated through the subsequent planning application through consent, or through conditions of consent or at the time of building permit. It's for the reasons outlined in the staff report that is my professional opinion that the request is appropriate, represents good planning, and therefore recommending approval of this application. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? I see none. Dan, again, you can step back, and the planner, I believe, is on the screen, and hopefully she will be coming up momentarily.
Good evening, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, but I can't see you, so you can carry on, Rashika, and present the application from the applicant's point of view. There you are.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and members of committee. Thank you for this opportunity to speak about the development application for 125 Oakland Road. Dan, thank you for your presentation. I think he's covered most of the things. We have submitted a concurrent consent application to sever off 5 new lots fronting onto Oakland Road. The technical studies that have been submitted and the conditions of approval for that consent will deal with, as Dan has mentioned, all the technical matters. It's worth mentioning about there's a 1987 development agreement that is registered on title, which would need to be amended and again will be dealt with comprehensively once we receive technical comments on the consent, so that all matters are addressed in the development agreement. We are supportive of the staff recommendation and happy to answer any questions the committee members have.
Thank you, Rashika. Committee members, do you have any questions to the applicant? I see no questions from the committee, Rashika, so I'm just going to ask you to stand by in your little square, and I'm going to ask the members of the public if they have any comments with regard to the application on 125 Oakland Road. And a second time, obviously the people here do not live in the proximity of 125 Oakland Road. They must be here for something else. So I see no members coming forward, Rashika. So I would thank you for your presentation. I'm in a position where I can adjourn the public hearing. And I will declare the public hearing adjourned and ask the committee how they wish to deal with the application 125 Oakland Road. Councilor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So move the recommendation.
And it's seconded by Councilor Bell. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Again, it's carried unanimously, and we'll move on to the next application, 9.3, which is an application 17 McBay Road. Dan, I declare the public hearing open, and you can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is another zoning bylaw amendment application for the property located at 17 McBay Road. And the agent, Mr. Ziotek, is with us virtually this evening. Staff are recommending approval of this application. The subject lands are identified on the screen. They are located on the south side along McBay Road. Have an area of approximately 2.3 hectares and existing conditions identify the existing single detached dwelling located on the property. Surrounding uses consist of large estate-style residential homes on large lots and private services, as well as agricultural uses outside of that rural residential designation. This image just identifies the existing dwelling at 17 McBay on the right side, the future severed lands in the middle, and an existing dwelling at 25 McBay Road, just to give you an idea of how this fits with the existing context of the area. The proposal remains unchanged from what was originally presented at the previous information meeting, where the application proposes to change the zoning on the entire subject lands from agricultural to rural residential. This application is required to facilitate a future consent application for the creation of one lot. The proposal mapping on the screen does show that the location of the future proposed severance, and that application is to be heard by the Committee of Adjustment at a later date. The designation, as I mentioned, is entirely rural residential, and the zoning, the purpose of this application is to change that zoning from agricultural to rural residential. This is the recommendation meeting where staff are looking for a decision from the committee. And I'll just note that no comments from the public were received, and the technical comments received will be have been considered as part of this application and as conditions of consent with the future severance application. And for the reasons outlined in the staff report, it's my professional opinion that the request is appropriate, represents good planning, and therefore recommend approval of this application. Thank you.
Committee members, do you have any questions? I see no questions, Dan, so if you could just step back for a moment. And I believe the applicant is on the screen. And Mr. Ziotek, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is your opportunity to expand upon your application to the members of the committee.
Thank you very much. Good evening to all. As far as the application itself and any further presentation, I think Dan has done an excellent job in terms of the technical aspects of the zoning bylaw amendment requested. So at this point in time, I would have no further information to add.
Well, let me ask the committee members if they have any questions of you, Mr. Ziotic. Questions to the applicant? I see no committee members with questions, Mr. Ziotic, so I would thank you for your presentation. And it's now the opportunity for members of the public, if they wish to comment on the application with respect to 117 McBay Road. Any comments with regard to 17 McBay Road? And a final time, and I see no members of the public coming forward, so I'm in a position where I can adjourn the public hearing, which I will do right now, and ask the committee how they wish to deal with the application, 17 Bay Road. Councillor Pierce.
Move to approve, Mr. Chair.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Oakley. Are there any questions, discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried, Mr. Ziotic. I don't know whether you could see that, but the recommendation will be going to the council meeting for approval.
Excellent. Thank you very kindly.
The next public hearing is with respect to 555 Paris Road, and the planner is coming forward, and as she comes forward, I will declare the public hearing with regard to the application on 555 Paris Road to be open, and as soon as the planner gets settled, we can hear the presentation. And just as she is getting ready, it's my intention to call a short recess after this application for 5 or 10 minutes and then come back and finish the applications.
Good evening, Council, members of the public. This is a zoning bylaw amendment for lands located at 555 Paris Road from MHBC Planning on behalf of the owner, GeoSource Real Estate, Inc., within the geographic township of Brantford. These subject lands are located on the south side of Paris Road. They are irregular in shape and have an approximate area of 32.3 acres and an approximate frontage of 22.8 meters along Paris Road. These subject lands are currently vacant. The applicant is proposing to rezone the subject lands from agriculture to heavy industrial with site-specific provision 31. The site-specific provision is to permit the following: a minimum off-street parking rate for a warehouse use of 1 parking space per 250 square meters of gross floor area, whereas 1 parking space per 100 square meters of gross floor area is permitted. A minimum lot frontage of 20 meters, whereas a minimum lot frontage of 30 meters is permitted. A maximum building height of 14 meters, whereas a maximum building height of 12 meters is permitted. To permit a building or structure to be established on a lot that is frontage on a private street with a minimum width of 10 meters. And a maximum driveway width of 12 meters, whereas a maximum driveway width of 10 meters is permitted in order to facilitate a future industrial development. Additionally, the applicant is proposing to rezone a portion of the subject lands from agriculture to natural heritage in order to preserve and protect the existing tributary, which flows to a wetland located southwest of the subject lands. The subject lands are currently designated employment and are located within site-specific policy area 16, along with woodlands and vegetation. They are currently zoned as agriculture. At the time of writing the report, I did receive a public comment from a nearby resident, just asking to be kept informed of the decision and meetings related to the rezoning. Once the report was finalized, I received 2 additional comments from members of the public with concerns related to traffic, flooding, and permitted uses. It is my professional opinion that the proposed rezoning is consistent with the provincial policy statement, in conformity with the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, conforms to the County of Brant official plan, and meets the intent of the zoning bylaw. I'm recommending approval of the rezoning application. Thank you very much.
Committee members, do you have any questions to the planner? Councillor Howes first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Shannon. I recall when this first came in, the first step, that there was a resident who lives in that area who had lived there for, I don't know, 20 years or something, and he had been under the impression when he bought his property that the land surrounding the water tower would never change because of potential water tower explosion or something, or like just runoff and things like that. And in respect to his concerns, and I think at the time he wasn't clear on who told him that 20 odd years ago, and it's certainly not part of his deed. But do you know if any environmental rules have changed related to water towers, or is it the same today as it would have been 20 odd years ago? And I'm also conscious of the fact that the designation for this property has been employment for over 10 years, right? So that's my question. Thanks.
Through the chair. So actually I followed up with that property owner, and I also did a look through our zoning bylaw official plan, and I reached out to our policy team to see if there are any regulations or requirements related to setbacks or anything I should be aware of that I might have missed. I wasn't able to find anything related to required setbacks for the water tower. In addition, the lands have been designated employment for some time. I did confirm the designation around his property and surrounding, letting him know the intention behind the policies for future uses of those lands and how that could have changed. Just explain that. And in terms of, he did express some concerns related to flooding for one of the lot configurations, which are in proximity to the water tower. I'd let him know that through circulation operations, did he note any concerns along with development engineering.
Thanks very much for that follow-up with that resident.
Did I see another question, Councillor Bell?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Shannon. Shannon, the zoning proposes an M3, which has a certain number of potential uses, which I think are inappropriate for a site so close to town. I'm particularly thinking about chemical and other processing facilities, food processing. Has any consideration been given to making this an M2, which restricts the uses of on those two particular issues?
Through the chair, when the proposal initially came in, it actually M2 zoning was proposed. However, through further conversations with the applicant and agent, it was determined that M3 would actually be more appropriate due to it being more permissible. We found that the M3 zoning was actually more appropriate as it was it has more permitted uses.
Yeah, and I think that's my concern. It permits uses that I think are inconsistent with the area in which it's being proposed. We had this discussion on
Councillor Bell. Again, this is just questions of clarification. We can deliberate at the proper time. Any other questions, Councillor Oakley?
Hi, through you, Mr. Chair, to staff. And sort of a similar vein to Councillor Bell's questions. There was an email correspondence from an abutting property owner about similar restrictions that were done on 539 about restricting cannabis production, chemical pharmaceutical industry, and there was a few others of note. Would these be reasonable to consider for this particular property?
Through the chair. So when that email came in, it was a little bit late. I haven't had a chance to speak with the agent and applicant, but it's certainly something that we could explore.
And I'm thinking the applicant can perhaps respond to that as well, which may be instructive. Any other questions to the planner? Then Shannon, you could just step back for a moment and I'll ask the applicant to come forward and perhaps expand upon the uses first of all and introduce his application.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if we could hold this image up, that would be great. Thanks, Shannon, for your presentation. And again, just generally, we're supportive of the staff recommendation. We're looking at lands that are designated for employment uses. We're proposing an employment zone. What this plan shows on the screen is what we've been working with our client on the potential for the best utilization of the lands. Currently, the plan is for, you can see the one building, I'll call it south, just if plan north, for the GeoSource head office facilities, which is some office and generally similar to what I'd call a contractor yard with some machinery and open storage. So that's the use that we do know. The other lots would be potential future uses that would be created by consent applications. And that's the purpose for some of the zoning bylaw requests with regard to a private road and having a private road to support the ultimate potential future development of the lands. It could be the one lot, it could be two lots. What we're showing is really a maximum of four, 5 lots with a small lot at the corner near the water tower. But what we're asking for tonight is to put the zoning in place. The details of the consent would be future considerations. The details associated with site plan would be future considerations, where we would look at site lighting, location of outdoor storage, and all of those matters. We've also looked at in a comprehensive way stormwater management for the development of the lands, all of the lands, not just the one lot. You can see there's a service corridor and a stormwater management pond located on what I'd explain as a master concept plan. As part of the application, there are a number of studies submitted, including traffic study. The entrance location that's shown with this proposal is based on discussions with county staff. It's really the only entrance or road frontage to the site. We would have further discussion with the county to look at amalgamating the access to the water tower and the entrance to this site so that there's one combined entrance. There was compatibility analysis completed as it relates to different types of uses. There are 20 and 70 meter separation distances that have been considered. I would just point out that the county-owned water tower lands really are represent an intervening existing use between the proposed use. I'll come back to the question on the M3 and the types of uses in a minute. So what is being proposed really is the zoning this evening. The details associated with the site development will follow, and we're asking that committee support the recommendations. It's been reviewed by the county's technical teams, the agencies, and all are in support of what's being proposed from a zoning perspective, which has given consideration to this, what I'll call an overall master concept plan. With regard to the zoning, Shannon did make me aware of the comments associated with the uses and the M3 uses. And I don't think there's any objection to look at removing things like chemicals, something, Councillor Bell, that you mentioned, or cannabis production. I think what I would ask is if we could move forward tonight and perhaps give us an opportunity to work with staff, take a look at what was approved for 539 Paris Road, and between tonight and council, maybe we could look at how we tailor to prohibit some of those uses. I don't think there's a major concern to look at taking out what I'd call some of those more intensive uses that what would be, in my opinion, when we talk about D6 guidelines, there's class 1, class 2, and class 3 uses. Those class 3 uses, in my opinion, wouldn't meet the setback requirements anyway. So those, I think we could look at taking out or prohibiting within the zoning bylaw, and we would have no concerns working with staff to do that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you. Then let's ask the committee if they have any questions to the applicant. Go ahead, Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Dave. Dave, just a question on the railroad there. CN says you need a safety berm. That's constructed at the cost of the applicant, yes?
To you, Mr. Chair, the CN comments with regard to safety berm and building locations, we'd have to work through as part of the site plan process once we understand where the buildings are. But yes, that would be a cost of the applicant if that's ultimately required as a mitigation.
And that, okay, just to be clear though, that would, our building division would have nothing to do, we wouldn't sign off, CN would have to sign off on all that.
Yes, that's my understanding.
And the setback, it wouldn't change if it was M1, M2, or M3, as far as you know.
Through Mr. Chair, the setback associated with CN?
Yeah.
No, that would remain consistent from a use perspective.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Dave, if you just step back for a moment, and I will ask members of the public if they have any comments with regard to 555 Paris Road. If you do have comments, just come forward to the podium, and I think the adjustment will be okay. Make sure the green circle is on and identify yourself, and you can proceed to make your comments.
Okay. My name is Karen Seal, and I live in one of the properties, 571, which is...
Just, excuse me, just a second. If you could just speak a little bit louder into the microphone so that I can hear you. You have all the time in the world.
My name is Karen Seal, and I live in one of the properties that are on Paris Road beside it. And I'm just here asking questions about what heavy means, because I used to live in Kitchener beside Bud Automotive, and they had presses, and heavy meant shaking your house across the street. So I don't know what heavy means, but I don't want a chemical plant, and I don't want presses like banging down with heavy foundations. Like, I don't know what heavy means. So I'm a little concerned over something very high-end industrial being in that space. Plus, I also live on that road, and I already experienced the traffic of having trouble getting out of my driveway. And I don't know how this much industry is going to add to that. And that's basically my questions. Does anybody have answers?
Okay, and the applicant will be returning and address some of your concerns when I get through with the rest of the public input. And thank you again for the halls. It's been a lifesaver. Are there any other comments with regard to 555 Paris Road? I see none. Dave, would you just like to come back and perhaps speak to the presenter and address some of the concerns and perhaps identify some of the ways that mitigation can happen?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the comments. With regard to the traffic, I know that there was a traffic study completed and reviewed by the county. There are some improvements that would be considered as part of the site plan as it relates to turn lanes and such, but I really, there's a joint traffic study done with the lands to the north that was supported, so I think county staff are satisfied with regard to the traffic associated with this development. As it relates to the uses, again, I think if there's consideration to support the direction here this evening, we have no issues working with staff to come back with I guess, amended bylaw that would look to prohibit uses, including sorry, I was just talking to Shannon for a second there, removing propane transfer facilities, those large, more intensive uses that could be more of a compatibility concern. So again, we'll commit to do that and be back with council with a modified bylaw removing some of those what I guess would you'd characterize as heavier industrial uses.
Okay, perhaps Dave, you can connect with the Karen, I believe is her first name, and she may have some additional questions that you can
That's fine, yes.
chat with each other and do it that way. And perhaps you can give your contact information to her if she has further questions that you can answer.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Committee members, you've heard from the applicant and the public. I'm in a position to adjourn the public hearing, and which I'll do right now, and ask the committee how they wish to deal with 555 Paris Road. Councillor Bell.
Make a motion to support the proposal, subject to the conditions that we just indicated. Now we have to speak to the motion.
Yeah. Do I have a second here? And again, it's conditional upon some of the changes that will be presented when the recommendation goes to council at the end of the month. Did you want to speak to that, John?
I would, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to say that I took the time to read the traffic study. It's quite a dry document, but it is full of facts, and I had a concern that we had not fully recognised the potential for traffic coming out of this development. I do now believe that we have got that right in the traffic study. I do have the same concerns as Karen, that it is a difficult road to come in and out of. So when it comes to the detail of design for that area, I don't know whether we can ask Matt to come back with and inform us as to how it's been designed. It really is, that particular corner is very, very difficult, and I can understand the concerns of residents. And I think we would do ourselves a favour if we were able to share the development of that particular intersection. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bell. Any other comments before I call the question? Then I'm prepared to call the question. All those in favor, 555 Paris Road. Opposed? The motion is carried. Just for the information, this is a recommendation that will go to the council meeting, and some of the revisions that they talked about will be presented at that time, and a final decision will be made by council at the next council meeting, which is at the end of the month sometime. And having said that, I did promise that I would take a 5-minute recess so I can catch my breath, and we'll reconvene in 5 minutes with the next item on the agenda, which is 9.5, I believe,
Okay, thanks very much. I'm John McAlpine. I've been asked to take over the chair for this remaining of the meeting. We're going to open up the next hearing. ZBA 4122 SL Shan LaBelle's 440 German School Road, 778-206 Ontario Incorporate. Chris Martin, would you like to proceed?
Right. This is a zoning bylaw amendment for lands located at 440 German School Road from MHBC Planning on behalf of the owner, Chris Martin, within the geographic township of South Dumfries. These subject lands are located on the south side of German School Road and on the east side of Clark Road. They are regular in shape, have an approximate area of 265.9 acres, and an approximate combined frontage of 825 meters along German School Road and Clark Road. These subject lands are currently occupied by a single detached dwelling and 7 accessory buildings. The applicant is proposing to rezone a portion of the subject lands from agriculture to agriculture with site-specific provision 9 in order to prohibit a residential use. Land zone as natural heritage will remain unchanged. The subject lands are currently designated as agriculture and natural heritage, and lands are currently zoned as agriculture and natural heritage. At the time of writing the report, no public comments had been received. It is my professional opinion that the proposed rezoning is consistent with the provincial policy statement, conformity with the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, conforms to the County of Brant official plan, and meets the intent of the County of Brant zoning bylaw. I'm recommending approval of the rezoning application. Thank you.
Do we have some questions from the committee? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just through you to Shannon. Shannon, the retained parcel is 2.2 acres. Is that, I am assuming, so it includes all the buildings that I see in the diagram?
Through Chair, sorry, could you repeat that question?
The retained lot is 2.2 acres. Is that so it can incorporate all the buildings on the site?
Through the Chair, sorry, the severed lot, I can't remember the size of it at the moment, but it's containing one of the accessory buildings, and the retained lot is should have 5 of the accessory buildings, and 1 is to be removed.
It's 2.2 acres, and there was no discussion to take any of them down. What I was asking is, why is the retained lot so large?
You mean the severed lot?
The retained lot, the 2.2 acres.
So through the Chair, so the severed lot is just one of the accessory buildings are going to remain with that lot. The retained lands will have 5 of the accessory buildings, and 1 of them is being removed.
Okay. Thank you. I might come back.
Do we have any other questions? Okay. So no more questions, and we'll move forward to the applicant, who is Kate Willis, Chesley Major Agent. Okay, I understand they are online, so if we can bring them up.
Thank you. Through the chair. So thank you, Shannon, for all your work on this file and for your presentation. It was very thorough. We agree with your recommendation and at this time have no further information to add, but we're available to answer any questions.
Do we have some questions from the committee? Okay. Seeing none, we can come forward for public comments. Do we have some public comments here? Asking once, twice. Seeing none, applicant's response to public comments. I guess there's none, so no comments. And how would you like to proceed with this? Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move the recommendation.
Okay. Moved by Mayor Bailey. Second by Mayor Bailey. All those in favor? Okay, motion is passed. Okay, moving on for the opening the hearings for RPT 053622, ZBA 36-22, SL 179 Howell Road, and Shannon. Would you like to speak?
This is a zoning bylaw amendment for lands located at 179 Howell Road from the Anglish Group on behalf of the owner Triple Lane Farms Ltd. within the geographic township of South Dumfries. The subject lands are located on the north side of Howell Road and on the west side of St. George Road. They are regular in shape and have an approximate area of 79 acres and an approximate frontage of 400 meters along Howell Road and an approximate frontage of 340 meters along St. George Road. The subject lands are currently occupied by 2 single detached dwellings, a feeder swine barn, and 3 accessory structures. The applicant is proposing to rezone the retained lands from agriculture with site-specific provision 1 to agriculture with site-specific provision 187 in order to permit a reduced lot area of 31 hectares, whereas 40 hectares is permitted. Additionally, the applicant is proposing to rezone the severed lands from agriculture with site-specific provision 1 to agriculture with site-specific provision 188 in order to permit a reduced minimum distance separation 1 setback, so an MDS 1 setback of 70 meters from the livestock barn on the retained lands to the existing dwelling on the severed lands, whereas an MDS setback of 464 meters is required, and a reduced MDS 1 setback of 113 meters from the manure storage on the retained lands to the existing dwelling on the severed lands, whereas an MDS 1 setback of 518 meters is required. This is an image demonstrating the existing situation with the current property with the subject lands, just showing the 113 meter setback from the existing dwelling on the severed parcel to the retained lands, and to demonstrate the setback from the existing dwelling on the severed parcel to the existing livestock barn on the retained lands. The subject lands are currently designated agriculture and natural heritage and are zoned as agriculture with site-specific provision 1. The current zoning permits 2 dwelling units. At the time of writing the report, no public comments had been received. The proposal went before the Agricultural Advisory Committee on December 19th of 2022, and the committee was in support of the proposed reduction to the MDS 1 setback based on the existing land uses and that no new land uses are being introduced. It is my professional opinion that the proposed rezoning is consistent with the provincial policy statement, in conformity with the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, conforms to the County of Brant official plan, and meets the intent of the County of Brant zoning bylaw. I'm recommending approval of the rezoning application. Thank you.
Do we have questions from the committee? Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Shannon. I want to talk about MDS for a minute here. So there's kind of a play on words here, you know, the retained lands from existing dwelling to the severed lands. Is there a difference as to MDS if it's an existing dwelling on retained lands as opposed to an existing dwelling on severed lands, or is MDS just, because to me this is huge reduction here. So I'm just trying to understand, is there a difference whether it's on the same retained land or severed land, or is MDS just exactly what it is?
Through the chair. So it was only triggered in this instance because of the new lot being created, and so we had to do an investigation of what the required setbacks would be based off of the existing livestock barn and the manure storage. When they did their MDS 1 report, it was determined that based off of the existing situation, the setback from the manure storage is required to be 518 meters, right, and from the livestock barn 464 meters. That's just the situation based off of the capacity of the manure storage and the livestock barn, and it was only triggered because we're creating a new lot.
Oh, okay.
So because if it was all on the same lot, it wouldn't be an issue, but because now we're creating a new lot, we had to figure out what these setbacks would be.
Okay, so there's the key. So I was on the right track then.
Yes.
So the MDS comes into play. If this was all on the same property, it's not a big deal. But because now we're severing this one, that's where the MDS comes into play here. And this is a drastic reduction. Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Shannon. And when you're doing the MDS and you show it on the diagram, you show the distance from the barn to the house, from the waste storage to the house. To me, the house isn't the big deal. The big deal would be the well. And do we know where the well is for that lot that's to be, or the houses that's to be severed? Does that come into play at all?
Through the chair, yeah, we actually know where the well is to be located. They submitted a survey recently confirming the new location of the well, and it's located just south of the existing dwelling on the severed lot.
Okay. I don't know which way is south. Is south down or up?
Down, sorry.
Okay, so be a little further. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Shannon. I'm still struggling with this MDS stuff. I'm sure I don't understand it correctly, but it seems like somebody's trying to create a parcel of land here that can be severed, and who's going to buy it when it's so far away from the MDS regulations that we have seen regularly and are specified here? Is it going to somebody that the person that's severing the land knows who's buying the property? Is there an agreement already in place that this won't come back and bite us in the future when somebody says, I can't build here because I'm too close to some animal property?
Through the chair, it's a great question. However, all of the situation currently, it's all existing. So if someone were to purchase the home, they'd be aware that it's in close proximity to an existing livestock barn.
Any further questions for the presenter? Okay. Thanks very much, Shannon. If you just want to sit to the side there, and we'll ask the applicant to come forward and make a presentation. And that would Rashika, which is online, I believe. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Chair and Committee. I think I'm going to jump right into the MDS issue, which has been raised. Can you hear me okay? I think I should start with that.
Should I start with so we can see? Yeah. Could we just get her up on the screen, please?
Jess, if we can hear her.
Yeah. There we go. We can hear you. We're just waiting to get you up on the screen.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, point of order. If Rashika doesn't have a presentation, we can still hear her, so she can proceed. Your call.
Okay. Rashika, do you have a presentation, or do you want to just proceed? We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I do not have a formal presentation. I would just simply speak about the MDS issue that has been just raised. There are two houses on the property. The house to be severed is occupied by the owner's kids, children. I shouldn't say kids. They're adults, and they help in the farming operations as well. So they are currently living there in close proximity to the barn. And after the severance is complete, the lands will be transferred to those children as well. So while the MDS setback number seems excessive, which is requested to be reduced, my understanding in discussion with the owner is that there are many other residential uses that are in close proximity of that barn currently. And if the owner has to expand, which is not the case of that livestock operation, then there will be significant conflict for expanding, which already exists for expanding the livestock operation. So even though the numbers seem a lot larger than what the required MDS setbacks are, it does not create a conflict in terms of both noise and order for the I would say the existing resident of that house, or the livestock barn is already limited by the residential users. So the owner does not have any plans to expand on the livestock operation. So I hope I have clarified a little bit, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may further have.
So I'm hoping everybody could hear that. Do we have any questions? Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Rashika. Rashika, I think I understood you correctly. The people that are buying this property understand exactly what they're buying.
That's correct. They are currently living in that house who will be buying this property. Through you, Chair.
So they would never raise a conflict, but are there any legacy issues when this comes up for resale at some time in the future?
That's a really good question. The conflict exists because the barns are existing right behind, I want to say, in close proximity to the existing house. So any future purchaser, if this house is to be sold again, I mean, you're going to live in an agricultural community, so you're expected to have some agricultural operations surrounding you. But I cannot speak about, what kind of conflict could arise in future. The house and the barns are currently existing.
Do we have any other questions? Yeah. Okay. So seeing none from the committee, do we have any comments from the public? Asking once, asking twice, 3 times, I guess. Seeing none, Rashika, any last comments?
No, thank you. Again, if there's any further questions, happy to answer them. But thank you. We're hoping that the committee and ultimately council supports staff recommendation.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll just pass it back to the committee for recommendation. Mayor Bailey.
Move to approve, please.
Okay, second by Councillor Coleman. Okay, any comments? Councillor Miller, then Councillor Pierce.
Just, I understand this one makes sense for the people living there now. I just wanted to respond to Councillor Bell's question because I have dealt with an issue where the original tenant is no longer there, a new one's there, and who do they call? They call their counselor because there is a large livestock barn right beside them, and some of the odors are negatively impacting their life. So it's a hard one, like I say, because I get that it fits with the people that are there now and the current owners, but is it a smart move down the road? I'm not so sure.
Councillor Pierce.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Through you, yeah, just a comment regarding the MDS. Again, and I appreciate the fact that right now it's family. Might not always be family there. I think it opens up a can of worms here that I'm not sure that I'm in favor of opening. If we think back over the last year to even 2 years of council, we've had a lot of discussions, and we've actually, I believe that there was a couple we refused because of the MDS wanting to be reduced, and it certainly wasn't reduced this much. So again, I appreciate the fact that it's family now and they're living in the house now, but I think it could it's got potential of coming back to bite us, as Councillor Bell says, and I agree with that statement.
Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. this application come in front of the Agriculture Advisory Committee when Jen and I were there a few weeks ago, and we supported it, and I'm still supporting it as right now. We cannot hamper an existing livestock operation, and that's why we supported it.
Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could just, for clarification from Councillor Coleman there, how would we be hampering the livestock operation by not allowing this?
They're trying to remove this other house.
But they're living there.
I know, but
Councillor Kyle.
So I think to further add to Councillor Coleman's comments through you, Mr. Chair, I think when the Agricultural Advisory Committee looked at it, one of the things we looked at was the potential for the farm operation to want to expand. And if they should want to do that, it's impossible for them to do it on the current footprint. So therefore, anything that they would want to expand would have to be significantly further back from where the existing dwellings are, potentially in like the back third of the farm, if not even further, just because of the way the rules are laid out in terms of livestock, specifically hog operations. So there was that consideration. It's an ongoing operation. It's an existing dwelling on that farm already. So they're simply asking to sever off a house that's not needed. And I mean, there's 10 other houses in that same strip of road that are all within the same, they all have the same issue. If any one of those houses would like to knock down and build again, we would be in the same situation with any one of those.
Okay, Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry to belabor this, but I'm trying to wrap my head around the expansion of the operations, which is, you know, great. If they want to expand it, that means they're getting bigger. That's a good thing. But again, I'm trying to understand as to how either allowing this severance or not allowing this severance would impede it growing. Because from what I'm hearing here, whether it's severed or not, if they intend to expand this, it's going to have to be on the back property. So I don't think the two are connected in my mind. Can somebody help me out here?
They're just basically saying that whether they sever that lot or not, it's already hampered by the neighboring lots that are already in existence. There's 3-4 lots within that close proximity there already. So whether they severed that or not wouldn't affect it that way. That's my impression.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chair, but that's the point that I made earlier, that we would not hamper it by not allowing. Okay,
not further. Okay. Is there any other further comments or questions? Okay. Having said that, well, Councillor Bell.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, just one final comment. And it really is a question to our staff on this legacy issue. Can staff give any reassurance that we're not going to come back and get bitten by this in 10 years' time because we allowed this to happen?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Bell, unfortunately we can't. We can't control who moves into a dwelling out in the agricultural area if it goes up for sale. So it could be someone from the agricultural area. It could be someone from the city. It could literally be anyone. We don't have the ability to control who would buy that house in the future. Like short of putting something on the title of the property, some sort of a warning clause that there would be a livestock operation next door, which if they could just look and see that. But yeah, it's like the answer is the obvious answer in this case. It's just unfortunate that we can't control who would purchase a house in the future.
Yeah, so maybe Mr. Chair. So my concern is that somehow or other the county will feel they may get sued because we have allowed this to happen, and a future purchaser will hold us liable for the fact that they are having to buy a property that has not been addressed properly in the sense of recognising the MDS issues now. I would like I think your idea of putting it on the title deed, that this does limit the ability to sell this property going forward.
Through the chair to Councillor Bell, it might be a question for our solicitor. She's here tonight. I think that would be a good question for Jody to answer.
Jody, would you like to comment on that, or?
Through you, Chair, to committee. I'm a little reluctant to get into legal advice in open session. I'm certainly happy to have this conversation with you at an appropriate time. Some of the issues that you've raised have come up in prior OLT hearings. So I'm concerned about privilege associated with my advice to council and committee. But I'm happy to have this conversation in an in-camera session.
Councillor Bell.
So I'm going to suggest we refer this to council, give us some time to get that opinion from our lawyer, that we're not putting a noose around our own necks here on this one. And if our lawyer can convince us that we're not going to be liable in the future, I could be supportive. But right now, I don't hear that coming from her because she can't give it to us at the moment.
Okay, so we have to deal with the recommendation on the floor.
Just because we have it right now.
Okay. Okay, so we do have to deal with the recommendation that's on the floor first, and before we can refer to a deferral, is my understanding. So then if my understanding is then if we turn this down, then we could defer it.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Bell, are you looking to refer or defer?
I don't think we can defer. I thought we were told a couple of weeks ago we can't defer anything. So we can only refer to another body, and the other body would be council in 3 weeks' time.
Sure, okay. Just the concern right now is just that we have the recommendation for the staff recommendation on the floor right now. So we just want to deal with that before we do any referrals or anything like that. Just procedurally, because it's on the floor right now.
So procedurally, if we
So we
didn't
gotta vote on
pass it,
something right now.
so if we turned it down, then they could defer it afterwards.
For sure.
But first, if they pass it, then it's not. Then the referral wouldn't be a possibility, right?
Can we just take a 5-minute recess, perhaps?
I thought the motion to defer.
We'll call the vote. Okay. Okay. Councillor Pierce.
Sorry, I just want the clarification here because it was my understanding that a motion to refer in essence supersedes a motion that's on the table. That's my understanding.
Okay. So this might.
Yeah, so go whatever you think.
Okay, so the challenge here again is these tight timelines that we have. So do we have time that we can refer this to the council meeting for this? Yeah. So we have the time. Okay. Well, that's what we're
Deferring like we could deferring it puts it off to another month.
but referring it to the council. Okay. And then they
Just essentially a deferral.
I thought a referral used to be what we would say before. It trumps.
So we could do like if it's up to Mayor Bailey, if he wants to, just because he's the member.
Okay, Mayor Bailey, do you want to refer it to council for a decision? We have the time to do that. Okay, Councillor Coleman, would you like to refer it to council?
If I made it, I would like to stick to my guns just because I don't understand why someone would buy a house next to a pig farm and not smell it or know it. And I don't think putting it on their title would do anything. If you buy a house next to a mushroom farm, guess what? On a bad day, you smell mushrooms. It's not up to the council who said that there's going to be a west wind every Thursday morning. So I'm leaving it on the table, hopefully that counts.
Okay, Councillor Coleman.
I just want clarification on which one of us made the motion. That's the first thing.
No, it's
if it whoever.
Mayor Bailey made the motion. It's my understanding. Yes.
You're seconding it?
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Okay, so we will call the vote. All those in favor of the motion? Okay. Those opposed? Okay. The motion is passed. Okay.
I am, but that's not the point.
Okay. We are on to consent items. Doesn't look, do we have consent items? Okay. We don't have any consent items. Committee reports, Agricultural Advisory Committee report. Recommendation is printed. Do we have a mover? Mover by Councillor Oakley, second by Councillor Kyle. All in favor? Okay. Staff reports. Okay. Draft new official plan status and update. Jennifer Boyer. Should I move the recommendation? Oh, okay.
Good evening, Chair and members of committee. Thank you very much. I've got staff report item 12.1 on the agenda. Draft new official plan status and update. There is an attachment, a long-awaited letter from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. I can give a brief intro, or we could actually just go straight to questions. If you would like, Chair.
Councillor House.
If we're going to questions, Mr. Chair, I've got a couple.
Okay, I could just give a quick brief overview. Yeah. So the report comes to you by myself, Pam Dusling, our General Manager of Development Services, and Daryl Lee, our interim CAO. Mr. Lee received correspondence from the MMAH on December 29th, a lovely New Year's gift, and it's the letter we've been waiting for 17 months. Our draft official plan was submitted under Section 17 of the Planning Act on August 17th, 2021. So it's been quite some time. And we've been waiting for formal comments under the province's one window review. That's a 90-day statutory review where we have to submit a draft of our document to the province for review. Although they are not obligated to give us comments, usually it's the partner ministries that review. And then MMAH in London compiles all those comments and sends it back to the municipality prior to finalization and then adoption by council. We've been waiting quite some time, obviously for a lot of political reasons. There was a provincial election, a lot of legislative changes, and now we're into Bill 23. We know that there's been a lot of pressure from a lot of developers and constituents. Even this week, I've received 5 other emails again inquiring about our OP. Everyone's asking because they're seeing a lot of things on the environmental registry posted about other municipalities. So they're asking what's happening. At this time, I guess we're seeking some direction on how to proceed, knowing that there is a large outstanding proposal for the provincial policy statement and the growth plan, the combo document. We have to conform to all provincial documents and plans, and that is one of the things that we don't know the timing. We've heard that it probably will be coming in the next couple months, but without that, we really can't finalize our document. So we're obviously seeking some input from the committee and then eventually council in a few weeks on how to proceed. Happy to take any questions, and Pam and Daryl are here as well.
Councillor House.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Jen. I think we all share the same frustrations over this situation. I do have a couple questions and I guess maybe a comment that might lead to direction after everybody's had a chance to kick this around a little bit tonight. First of all, the letter we received December 29th, 2022, is that the first and the only response that we got from the ministry in 17 months?
Through the chair to Councillor House, yes, it is the only official correspondence we have received from the province.
And have we had unofficial or informal responses and can you tell us the difference between an unofficial response and an official response? And I've got a couple others.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor House, yes, indeed, we're in. I think I've indicated for the previous council and also yourselves at committee before is that we have ongoing contact with the province, and in fact, I used to meet with them, and Pam was included as well, almost monthly. And we have a planner representative on our file at MMH London, and I think the letter even highlights that it actually acknowledges our correspondence with the ministry, and it's been very good. And the previous council was aware that we were also touted with our draft official plan as being like the first to submit in the Golden Horseshoe, and we had some very novel approaches. We did our whole agricultural impact assessment in-house, so we were actually regarded quite highly, and that's why I think it's a bit disappointing to get this letter at this time. So we knew that there was a bit of rumblings, and I think there was a lot of pressure to put something in writing, because verbally we've been indicated that, you know, the comments were written November 2021, and they were sent up to the minister for approval. And then the Housing Affordability Task Force was written. We got into the new year with all the, you know, More Homes acts, and then the provincial election. And I think there was just pressure that we weren't going to budge unless that we received some formal indication of getting comments. So,
and if I can continue, Mr. Chair, I guess when I look at the third page of your report, halfway down, the word collaboration jumps to mind, and the intent through this process is a period of collaboration between the municipality and the provincial ministries. And would it be fair to say that without official response, we did not get that level of collaboration that's intended? And I guess my other question is, did other municipalities of our size, did they receive, are you aware of any of them receiving responses, official responses? And then I have one last comment.
Through the chair to Councillor House. So usually what happens is we are legislatively required to submit through the one window review, but I was told by the ministry that they are under no obligation to give written formal comments on a draft. It's usually through meetings or verbal indication, but usually with a breadth of a new package with a new OP and a large municipal comprehensive review, they do look for a conformity exercise. And I knew that on our land needs assessment, there were some comments for revisions. So that's what we were waiting for. And I've talked to a lot of other municipalities, like Pam and Matt and I are on a lot of planners forum. I was on one yesterday with the Western Ontario Caucus, Warden's Caucus planners. And there were a few municipalities who did not get comments on their draft submissions. They ended up just forging ahead without them. So it's not uncommon.
All right, thank you. My last comment is it absolutely sounds like it's time for us to forge ahead. And to turn that into a question, I guess, realistically, how quickly can we turn this into a final official plan that we can submit? If it was up to me, we'd do it tomorrow. But I understand respectfully that there are some tweakings that need to happen. But realistically, how quickly could we call this a final official plan and forge ahead?
Through the chair to Councillor House. So I've done a rough estimate, and we have to meet at least some Planning Act timelines under Section 17.1 of the Planning Act. So Ministry of Municipal Affairs has indicated to us they don't want to see another draft. And that's very clear in the letter, and they've told us that before. Even if we would get comments, it's like, you know, we'd give you the comments, but then see you at the finish line. So we have to actually give that through the one window. So before we actually bring a final official plan to council to get adopted to submit to the minister, what we have to do is we have to have a minimum of 20 days public notice of the final version, which really, when you count it, it's at least a month. We have to have an open house, and then we actually have to give notice because it's an official plan amendment of the 30 days in the paper. So if you actually sort of do the time frame, and we have to make, like, we've been picking away in the background on the official plan, but we do have revisions to make. We have mapping. We still have to incorporate some of the December 2021 council resolutions as well. Some of them were on hold. So we do have at least a couple months of work. But I'd say with all those time frames, we're looking around like May, about that, sort of around Easter. Just Easter's a bit early, so, and with the open house that we have to book for the public. The question is there one open house, or do we have a special meeting of council and that is the time to have the public delegations, or do we actually go out to the public? We've actually, well, Councillor Coleman's left, but we've actually, because it was all during the pandemic, we've actually never gone out physically to people. It's all been virtual. So what that open house will be is really up to yourselves to think about. Is it an open house in a community center or at the Ag Hall, or is it here? You don't have to have that answered tonight. And perhaps between Pam and Daryl and I, we can sort of crunch some numbers about specific timing. I'm sitting down with Pam tomorrow about our work plan and our staffing resources. So.
Okay, thank you. I wish that letter had come in a year sooner, and whatever we can do to fast track this to the finish line, I'm all for it. Thanks.
Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Jen. Jen, on page 2 of your report, you said it's proposed that the final plan be adopted after a number of key reports are presented to provide an update on specific items such as growth forecasting, rural settlement areas, employment lands, and housing targets. That sounds like an enormous amount of work, and it also kind of makes me worry that, you know, I thought we knew our targets, and therefore, why are we talking about potentially new targets? Why are we talking about new forecasts? I understand there's new census data, and you know, the reference point at the beginning, I can understand that. But my concern is that we reopen this to a level that I think is inappropriate, given it seems that whatever we do, the provincial government will tell us what they want. So it doesn't really matter what we say, but I would rather we say what we want to say. And I think we have gone through 3 years of process, I think very rigorous process, very well done, which says this is what we as the County of Brant want to meet the targets that we've been set. So if you want to comment on the likelihood of change in some of these big parameters, I would like to come back and have one more comment.
Through the chair to Councillor Bell. So the only open-ended question is what the province is going to do with the growth plan and provincial policy statement combination. So we know that they're combining them. And right now in the growth plan in Schedule 3, there's our forecast. So our population, residents, and employment. If that is removed, they could give us something new, but that's very open-ended right now. The policy planning team is actually going through all of the decisions in every single municipality on their final OPs. And what we found they're doing is actually underlining in bold their actual forecast population targets. So from what we've seen from the Golden Horseshoe, they aren't changing those forecasts. But we have a feeling if they remove Schedule 3 of the growth plan, they could assign us a new number. It's just that we don't know what that is right now. And I think that's part of the open-ended issue of waiting to see what they come up with in the next couple of months.
So thank you for that, Jen. So I think it just reinforces in my mind that there's a little point in hanging around. We should close this off as quickly as we can with the information we've already gathered over the last three years. Some of the I don't want to open a Pandora's box because you asked about how many public meetings we want. I think we need to close it off, given the study that we've done, submit it. The original thought was we would have a 2-year grace period in which no amendments to the official plan could be brought forward. Well, that's gone. So there's nothing lost in a sense by finishing our official plan as quickly as possible. And if people want to bring amendments forward, they will bring amendments forward. So like Councillor Howes, I would go for the quickest possible close on this that you can.
Any further comments or questions? Councillor Miller.
Yep, I agree. Get her done, because I think they're just going to change it anyways if they don't like it.
Councillor Oakley.
I'd just like to throw my hat in the ring with also agreeing with that sort of ideology.
Councillor Gunano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm mindful that Councillors Chambers and Coleman are not here. Yes, I do agree we should move forward in an expeditious manner, but I'm cautious that, as Jennifer's indicated with regards to public consultations, that we don't want to be seen as glossing over or rushing those. I know there has been a lot of work done and the public has been involved in the past. However, I think there's a lot of people who are new to our community over the last several years. There are also a lot of folks for whom, and this was noted, I think, with our delegations from Burford fairly recently, for whom virtual does not work. So as much as I think we do want to get this done, I think we need to be very deliberate about some public consultation, public meetings that are in person, accessible, and also communicated to residents more than just online. Certainly a number of the folks out my way are not active on the computer. And if they don't receive information about this in another format, we're likely to face criticism that they were not informed. So I just want to be mindful of that as we balance the timeline with the role of the public here.
Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think just taking Councillor Garneau's comments, really appropriate comments. So the answer is, how quickly can we get to the end and do all that Councillor Garneau has suggested, which I think is quite correct.
Okay. Councillor Bailey, Mayor Bailey.
And what council might not, or this committee might not know, is that they've already been starting and they're redoing the official plan. They've been working hard and late already, trying to do it again from the start properly. Just because usually when you fast track something, it comes back and bites you.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate if the Mayor could say a little bit more about that, because I'm surprised by the way in which you put that we've reopened the process, we started again. I can understand there's some tuning, but my goodness, I hope we haven't started again.
Would you like to comment there?
Oh, yeah. Through the chair to Councillor Brown. No, we haven't started from scratch at all. What we've done is we're taking all the work that's been done with the draft. And don't forget, we had already, when the draft was submitted, we also had the 2 special meetings of council, December 2021. And then we've had further legislative changes, and those are the items. Then we've had mapping tweaks. We have a whole online GIS system where all our points have put in. We've had all the submissions. So that's those kinds of tweaks. I think what Mayor Bailey is indicating in terms of like what the statutory requirements are in terms of the Planning Act and making sure that like it's not just submitting tomorrow. We actually do legislatively need to have another open house. We have to post a draft for 30 days. We legislatively have to do those things. It's not negotiable at this point. So.
Okay. But that's not going back to the start. That's just following the process.
We do have a recommendation here, which does include public hearings and everything mentioned. Do we have a mover for that, or do you want?
Sure, okay. Mr. Chair. I move that we. This committee has given a strong message to staff on the value of getting us to that finish line, and let's provide the staff this direction to proceed with the necessary steps, but as quickly as possible.
Okay. Do we have a second? Second by Councillor Bell. All those, are any last comments? Okay. All those in favor? Okay, anybody opposed? Pass. Okay. Is there any communications? No communications, other business? Seeing no other business, we'll go, do we have a motion to move in camera? Moved by Councillor Pierce, second by Councillor Miller. I'll just give a minute for, the public will have to. Okay. We don't have
sitting around a table cooking up. You know, she's right.
Are we back in, okay.
Absolutely. And we all.
Okay, we're back in session and we have a motion for adjournment. Moved by Councilor Peters. Thank you. We are moving. As I said, that was not on my list.